It's social distancing at the chamber, segment we sometimes call Happy Hour with Hammer. My name is Garrick Taylor. As always, joined by the CEO of the Arizona Chamber, Glenn Hammer. Hey, Glenn.
Good to see you.
Glenn, it's always fun when we have a special guest, and that tonight is one of those nights we go into the world of think tanks. Why don't you introduce our special guest?
Well, we're very fortunate to have Jenna Bentley, who's the Director of Government Affairs at the Goldwater Institute with us. Jenna really does a great job at the state capitol and does a great job of just educating all of us on a whole array of policies that have made the state more competitive. And I tip my hat to the work Goldwater's done over the years and in such areas as licensing reform, which now is spreading around the country, blue states, red states, purple states like wildfire. And Jenna, thanks for being with us tonight.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, the reason we have you on the show tonight is, I believe earlier today, I've lost all sense of time, so I think it was today. I know it was this month. I saw this paper, No on 208, from the Goldwater Institute come across my email, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on this proposition.
Yeah, thank you. So today we did launch a website that kind of outlines our opposition to Proposition 208, also known as the Invest in Ed tax hike. We were opposed to this when they tried to do it in 2018. We remain opposed to it today. This is really trying to, solve a problem in an incorrect way. I think whether or not you believe that there are education funding issues in Arizona, Prop 208 is going about this in the wrong way. What it's going to do is put a tax on the highest 1% earners in our state. And that money will then be supposedly going to the classroom to help teachers. But the truth of the matter, the devil's in the details. That's not really where these funds are going. Only 10% of these funds are dedicated to the teachers. The other 90% can go wherever to support staff. So I think it's a misnomer to say that this is truly for teachers. And the effects of this are going to be catastrophic on Arizona's economy. I mean, we're already a little, fragile in a precarious position with COVID. A lot of businesses are having to shutter or really suffering to survive the pandemic. And this is going to hit them hard. I mean, this is when they say, it's the top 1%. The truth of the matter is, businesses that are above $250,000 in earnings are going to be impacted by this. So it's really going to decimate small businesses in Arizona. I think, the people who, everyone kind of thinks, well, the top 1% earners, they can afford this. This is going to be nothing to them. And really what we've seen, and if we can just look to our neighbor in California, if you start overtaxing, that is a highly mobile population. They will leave the state. So we're going to have the top 1% earners leaving in Arizona. We're going to be really shuttering these struggling businesses already. And then we're not going to be putting teachers in a better place that they would have been had we done a better job of trying to reform the current education funding system rather than just increasing taxes and those funds kind of disappearing into the ether instead of going to the classroom.
Well said. And the mobility issue is a real one. It's not a theoretical. I've lived it in my life. I grew up in New York, and yeah. I was supposed to wind up in Florida, Jenna, but as I say, I have a bad sense of direction, so I wound up in Arizona. But tax rates matter. And when you take a look at the individual income tax rates, and I do believe a part of this is because so many businesses in Arizona and across the country are organized so that they pay under the individual income tax, whether it's on the state or the federal level, is that I don't believe it's a coincidence that population trends tend to follow what that top rate is.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we really just need to look to California and look at the mess that they're in right now to see we do not want to fall down that road. We should be looking at them as a warning sign, not as a roadmap.
Yeah.
Well said.
That's well said. Jenna, when we think of the Goldwater Institute, we certainly think of the sort of tax policy that you're talking about tonight, but when it comes to education, I think of Goldwater as solidly in the reform, outcomes-based policies, choice.
Mhm.
Is any of that in Proposition 208?
No, and that's the real shame of it too. I think what we're seeing right now in this pandemic, when parents are having to look for other remote education opportunities or school choice options, we're seeing that school choice is an amazing tool to have at people's disposal, especially now. People are finding additional aids. They're finding that, maybe my kid does work better from an alternative learning environment, or does, learn better from home. And Prop 208 does none of that. I mean, if we're really looking at reforms, one, we should be increasing school choice options, not having teachers refusing to, allow for remote distant learning features in their curriculum. And, really at the end of the day, we need to be providing, parents are in the best choice to decide what educational opportunity is best for their kids. Prop 208 does none of that. None of that infrastructure is in there. Like I said, only 10% of these funds are specifically earmarked for teachers. The other 90% can go to wherever, and probably not going to be towards, anything that has to do with distance learning or remote learning, or internet access for students, or anything like that. So, if we want to look at good reforms, I think we should look at how much money, the individual school districts take, and kind of see how the school districts get a huge, over half of Arizona's budget goes to K-12. Where does that money go? It's going to the districts, but somehow it's not getting to the teachers. And I think we need to look at who in the administration is really taking those funds. And, like I said, nothing in Prop 208 helps parents. It doesn't really help the teachers. And, the people that it should be helping the most, the students, this does nothing for them.
And one of the ads that I saw is amazing. The ad for this effort didn't mention that it's the largest tax increase. Didn't even mention it's a tax increase. So I don't know if they just expect the money to come from the federal government or the UN or from Mars. And they claim that there's accountability in this, but I couldn't find any accountability in this whatsoever.
There is none. And, maybe let's call it what it is. It's a tax hike, right? And they're not going to want to use that word, because when people are struggling in a pandemic, tax hike doesn't sound great. But it is. And if this passes, Arizona is going to be the 10th highest in the nation for taxes. And I mean, that's horrific. How can we overcome not only, a pandemic, but then have this huge financial burden saddled on people? And, just because we say that it's the top 1%, it's not just them. These businesses go out, that's job loss. That's massive job loss. And we're already struggling with job losses already. So we're just compounding an issue already. Raising taxes when we're on the brink of a recession is just not fiscally sound.
Yeah, we still, even though our economy is certainly coming back, we're still down hundreds of thousands of jobs, in certain sectors like tourism have been hit extremely hard. And one of the reports I saw out there, that somewhere around 50% of the Arizonans who work for private sector companies could be working for an entity that could be affected by this proposition because of the way our tax code is set up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Arizona, I think we've had strong enough leadership in this state over the past few years that we've been weathering this pandemic pretty good. But something like this kind of could really backslide us, and unfortunately it's not being presented to the public with that information. It's just kind of being presented as like, give teachers a raise. And that's just not the truth of it.
And that's why it's so important, and we're grateful that the Goldwater Institute has put out such important materials. I mean, it's when people read the work that the Goldwater Institute puts out, it's voters of all parties take it very seriously. And we're in for quite a battle. And I believe you conclude the paper, and you almost can't write this stuff, is that thus far, in terms of what's been publicly disclosed, most of the funding has come from an entity in Portland, Oregon, and
out of state.
Out of state. Now, if you don't want to look to California as a model, I'd argue right now I wouldn't necessarily look at Oregon as a model for our policies, education, or tax, or anything. So, to me, this is a pivot point for the state of Arizona. Do we continue on the road we've been on, where we've seen great growth? I believe we're all in the fastest growing county in America right now. Yeah. Or do we go in a different direction that would, where we would all suffer, teachers, small business people, and all of our citizenry, including the people like me who moved from another state?
Yeah, I'm from Massachusetts, and my family's there, and they have a small business, and this would decimate them, and Arizona it's such an amazing state. We really have, over the past few years, been able to lure tech companies and new businesses, and we have the IT sandbox stuff, and families. So I worry that if Prop 208 passes, this really could not only stop that forward momentum, but actually, take us back. This could put us back about 10 years from the economic growth that we've done. And that's truly frightening.
And the other piece of this that we just uncovered yesterday, thanks to a number of people, is there's no inflation adjuster in here either. Yeah. So this gets worse every single year, and will capture more people and businesses.
And with Arizona's Voter Protection Act, none of this can change. This is permanent. So, if we needed to make spending changes in the wake of a pandemic, we can't do that. And that's going to force, other programs that are pretty vital to have to be, either cut or defunded, and, to shackle us and not have the ability to kind of address these issues as they come up with our, our budget is just, it's short-sighted. It's very volatile. It's unstable, to be frank, because the funding's going to have to come from somewhere. And like I said, if these small businesses shutter, if these higher income earners leave the state, it's not like we can just magically pull those funds from somewhere else, right?
That's true. Garrick?
Jenna, one of the things that chambers of commerce and business advocates and the Goldwater Institute have in common is that when it comes to tax policy, ideally, you're looking for something that's fair and equitable and simple, easy to understand. Something that Glenn has flagged in all of this is that the Fortune 500 isn't touched at all by this, because they file their taxes on the corporate tax code. Yeah. Look, Jen, I know life isn't fair, but there seems to be something particularly cynical about going after small businesses, and the apples of the world are left. We don't touch them at all.
Absolutely. No, that's 100% correct. And, I think that's just, it's the disservice of how this is being presented to voters. It really, Arizona, tax code is complicated, right? It's hard for the average person to kind of understand, filings and stuff like that. But the truth of the matter is that's exactly it. The big companies that are here, the Fortune 500s, like I said, they're not going to be affected by this. Either they're, filing under federal, or they'll leave. They're just not going to stay in Arizona. So it's unfair, it's burdensome, and I think it's really important for people to understand that even if you're not in top 1% earners, that you're going to be directly paying this tax, you will be impacted. Jobs will be lost. This will affect, people's ability to get employment, especially, for people who are just starting out at minimum wage jobs. Those are the first to go. Small businesses are the ones that oftentimes have the entry-level jobs, and those are going to be wiped off the market. So we're going to start seeing, kids entering the workforce, not being able to find a job. And, that's just going to balloon outwards. So a ton of really disastrous, unintended consequences here. And frankly, this is just not the right thing for Arizona.
Yeah, well said. Well, Jenna, we really appreciate the work that you and the Goldwater Institute are doing. We've encouraged everyone to go to the Goldwater Institute's website. They've set up this microsite all about Prop 208. I would anticipate that between now and Election Day, you're going to have lots of research and analysis coming out about this measure, right, Jenna?
Absolutely. And we're going, we've got a pretty good breakdown already about Prop 208, some of our main arguments against it. We have a link to resources, and as we continue forward through the election, we're going to be updating that with new resources as well.
Great. Thanks, Jenna.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, Glenn, another great episode in the can.
Jenna was great, and I just appreciate everything that she's doing at Goldwater. It makes a big difference.
All right. Thanks, Jenna.
Thanks so much, guys.